When Roxy cries, we all cry. This was a Roxy focus episode. We did get a bit of Rudy and the gang in the beginning, but first and foremost, this was a Roxy episode. And it's great to see that the anime studio clearly enjoys Roxy as a character as much as the anime fandom seemingly does, because the level of passion put into scenes specifically with Roxy as the main focus really do feel like they're given as much treatment as the big emotional moments like the scenes we just witnessed over the past couple of weeks with Rudy and his father, right? And to see the way they detailed something I don't think I've ever seen in anime, at least done in the way that they did with sound effects. The idea that Roxy feels like an outsider in her own home, in her own village, that when she grew up, because her race communicates via telepathy, right? So naturally, it's a very eerily quiet village to those who can't use that same skill. And Roxy, despite all of her talents, can't do that. So when they try to communicate, you get this very... I don't even know how I want to describe it. It almost feels like a blip sound effect, but something's clearly wrong and you have this flashing light. It was so eerily done that I honestly think it was like the perfect way to represent why someone would go almost insane or would feel like they're being tormented or ridiculed or looked down upon in a place that should be their home, even if they weren't necessarily mocking. I mean, to have that confusion, because naturally everyone, the blue hair, everything like that, you should be able to understand us and you should be able to send your thoughts to us, and the fact that you can, it's a little odd. Even if they weren't necessarily attacking, it's something that would eat away, especially for someone who's young. And I mean, this is a race that lives, I think, like 200 years or something, I think is what they told us back in Core 1, something like that, right? I mean, it's something that, even though she hadn't been home in some time, and you could argue, well, they have like a long lifespan, so there was still time to go back. I mean, 20 to 50 years of visit is something that's not as much as she would want. And I think to see the build-up throughout this episode, going back to that callback in Core 1 when Rudy went up against the horseman, who... I mean, it's interesting getting a different perspective with that character and how Roxy pretty much is like, oh, you still like kind of prying on the weak, and he's talking about his family and how he's basically just teaching people the rules of the road. It still doesn't, I think, excuse some of the bullshit that happened with Rudy, but it's interesting to see a character like Roxy not like sucker punch the horse, but almost like take a beating in terms of life lessons. It's so interesting, but then again, Rudy also kind of gave him a beating a couple of years back, so also changed his tune somewhat as well. And to see the idea of like Roxy being the one being scolded after just coming off of Rudy and Paul being scolded, it was interesting because they didn't need to do this. I think you could argue and you could have made like a 5-minute flashback whenever Roxy and Rudy meet back up and you saw that they made amends with the family. And I think most studios probably would go that route even if it was in the source material, because they would prioritize other characters and would only really give a character like Roxy the spotlight if she was on screen with Rudy. But by really seeing how down in the dumps she was, that she's been searching for Rudy, and I mean, we've known that, right? And we've known that she's been searching for the others, doing her own thing. But to see kind of like what led up to her like trusting that Rudy will be okay, to finally getting that confirmation that she knows that dead end isn't just something that she needs to, change her trousers whenever she hears of them, but the fact that she gets a confirmation that Rudy either A, has swindled his way to like get someone who should be dangerous to join his side, or he's crazy enough to fake the appearance. And I love that you just kind of get this sense of emotion that's not necessarily trying to make you cry throughout the episode. Though the final scene with the parents and her breaking down and crying, it's hard not to get a little teary-eyed, if not bawl, just given everything that they went through. But to see her finally come home and, just really feeling like an outsider that entire time, the fact that as soon as she entered those doors, she immediately wanted to leave. That's how scared she was. And that moment, I think, honestly, this was my personal favorite moment of this episode, when the mother is saying, would you at the very least please come back every 20 years? Because she's trying to say, I don't know if I'll ever be back. She went there to begin with because of the lecture in the tavern, but she's someone who just... she can't face reality of what she thinks they feel and how much of a outsider she is, even to her own mother and father. So the idea that the mother's like, every 20 years come back, and then she says, I might come back every 50, and that made her so happy that she cried, thinking that they would never see their precious daughter, someone that they love so much, would give anything for, blames themselves for, her feeling like an outsider, like they didn't give her the gift that she needed to navigate life. And the fact that in return she broke down and cried, like there was something so sweet and simple about these characters, because 2 years back, or 6 episodes, 7 episodes back, for Rudy and the gang, we saw and we knew that they cared, but for Roxy, she very much felt like she was a disappointment. And that scene, it says to both sides, Roxy and the parents, that they were family. It didn't matter if other people blamed or said things or this or that. They are family. And had Roxy not had a mission to go look for people, she probably could have stayed there for quite some time and really got to rebond with her family. But, it's better to, make amends than to wonder what could have been, sort of a thing, right? Even if, you ponder and say, we wasted so many years because of this, it's better to have more years to come, or just that moment in particular, than to realize one day that they're gone because they eventually died and you never got to say how you felt, or got to really hear how they felt, sort of a thing. And I really, really like that. In terms of Rudy side content, they're pretty much just on the boat, right? Ruger's allowed to be on the boat. And, it's interesting to see how unaffected he is in terms of the seasickness. Rudy is holding on as good as he can. Eris being Eris, throwing up. When you see the boat pretty much, almost on his side, it's hard not to say, if you're not throwing up on that ship, even if you're not prone to seasickness, holy shit, do you have the stomach of a goddamn sea god. But I think one of the other cool moments was when Rudy was kind of, putting down Paul in his friendly way, kind of saying, kind of making fun and poking fun, the general way Paul and Rudy would do, without that hostility. And then you see Ruger being don't talk ill to your father, and he's kind of saying no, this is kind of our relationship. And Ruger's okay. But then Rudy talks about how he wants to enjoy his time on the road with both of them, but first and foremost, the priority has to be the loved ones and figuring out what happened. That really goes to show that everything we experienced over the past couple episodes is not going to be forgotten by Rudy, that he has changed and evolved, and that all these moments really do help to define his character and shape him into a lovable person, all things considered. And it'll be really interesting to see whenever we do meet back up with Roxy and Rudy in the same place. I doubt it will be this season, but, maybe in the next season when we do get it, maybe we will get to see that moment. And I think both Roxy and Rudy, when they meet back up, there's going to be familiar elements to their relationship, but I think they're both going to look at each other as massively changed and evolved because they both matured in their own way, which is a really good sign for their character arcs and, just kind of praise for the character writing in general. I think this show is absolutely quality. There isn't a bad episode, there isn't a bad character to follow, and even characters that can infuriate you, they serve such a unique purpose for this world and its characters that it's hard not to come out loving every aspect about every episode. But of course, as always, I'll pass the torch over to you. What did you think of the going home episode and the boat ride that we did get a snippet of in this episode? Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.